Hi, my name's Kyle from themediaspeaks.com. Today I wanted to talk about something that I think is important that I don't think a lot of people understand, and that is who they are. You'll hear a lot of libertarians, a lot of conspiracy theorists, a lot of truthers, a lot of patriots. You'll hear them a lot of the time say they are out to get us. They started a war. They are devaluing the dollar. And a lot of people rightfully ask, who are these they that you talk about? So I figured I'd try and explain who exactly they are. And it's simple, yet kind of complicated. It's three groups, really. Three groups make up they. And in order from least important to most important is probably politicians, then publicly traded corporations, and lastly, the most important piece is the banks. So let's start off with the politicians. Who do politicians represent? They don't represent you. They represent their interest groups, the people who keep them in office. And the people who keep them in office are the people who pay for their campaigns, pay for them to be able to run ads and go all over the country or all over their state and make sure people are voting for them, make sure that the right people are saying the right things about them so that when you go into the voting booth, you only have the information they want and they get into office. So those people are lobbyist groups, owners of these publicly traded companies, and people who have things that they want done. So these people get the politicians elected, not us. The average person isn't that bright, and they'll fall for these phony tricks. So by the time somebody gets elected into office, they're bought and paid for. They owe favors, and they're going to return those favors. So they don't represent you, they represent their own self-interest of wanting to be able to continue to stay in office. And to continue to stay in office, they have to make sure the people giving them all the money are happy. So a politician gets into office, and let's say a guy from, one of these publicly traded companies gave him a ton of money. In return, this publicly traded company is going to want legislation passed, and they do that by buying the politicians and through paying lobbyist groups to write up the legislation and pressure the politicians to pass it. Now, a lot of people, conservatives, they like to think that the publicly traded companies are the good guys. They want less regulation. They don't want, all these laws coming down on them. That makes it harder to do business, but that's not the case. What ends up happening is a company usually starts out good. A small company, they have the right people in mind. They have their employees and their customers, right? But publicly traded companies, they don't care about you as the customer, and they don't care about you as the employee. They care about their stockholders, which in a way aren't even benefiting that much. They could benefit their employees and their customers a lot more than they benefit the stockholder, but they want the stock to always be rising in value to keep the stockholder happy, because the stockholder essentially owns a percentage of the company. So once a company gets that big, they actually want more regulation. They want more regulation because they can handle the regulation. They can hire somebody whose only job is to figure out how to get through that regulation where the small guy can't. And when they do that, new competition can't enter their market, so it's a small price to pay for them to dominate whatever it is they do. An example would be the pest control industry. If you want to go out and get rid of raccoons or mice or ants from people's houses for a profit, you can't just go do research on how to do that. You can't just take the knowledge you already have and go do that. You have to go and you have to get a license, and you have to get certified, and you have to get approved by the state, and you have to keep all these very specific records, and you have to do everything a very specific way. Why? Not necessarily because those are things necessary to do that task, but because the big companies that already dominate that industry, they can put up with that. They can do a little bit of training. They can have one guy who sits there and goes through all the regulation and makes sure they're all on the up and up. You, as the small business owner or attempting to own a small business, that's all on you. You can't afford to have somebody else do that. You can't afford to pay a guy $100,000 a year to make sure you're on the up and up with all that stuff. That falls on you, making it almost impossible for a newcomer without a giant publicly traded company backing them to enter that market. It's like Rockefeller said, competition is sin. So they create legislation around their own industries to keep other people out, because who knows how to deal with and do everything legally around that legislation? The people who wrote it. So these people who paid to get the politicians in office, in return, get this legislation that keeps other small businesses and new people in the industry from entering that industry so that they can please their stockholders. But the stockholders, which could potentially be you and me, are still getting screwed because the average stock doesn't outperform inflation. So really, owning stock or owning a CD or any type of relatively safe investment, all it does is make you enough money so that you're not losing money as your money is being devalued. So if a stock goes up in price a little bit over the year, you're not really making money because that money's been devalued the entire time. So who's devaluing this money? Why is it that over the course of my lifetime, I've seen the cost of a bottle of pop double? The cost of many things double. Why is it that the dollar is worth less now than it was then? And why is it that when you get that stock and you earn a return on it, that return generally, if you own one of the Fortune 500, a company like Walmart, McDonald's, Best Buy, you're really not making any more money. You're just keeping even. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And it's all pretty much the banks. So the banks are the most important part of they. Because without the banks, the politicians and the publicly traded companies couldn't really do what they do. Because it all revolves around money. And the money is created by the banks. And not just Federal Reserve banks, currency issuing banks, the Bank of England, but all banks create money on a regular basis. Now, obviously, banks like the Federal Reserve, who prints Federal Reserve notes, the US dollar, they create them out of nowhere. There's no gold backing it. There's nothing backing it except for the fact that oil is traded on the US dollar, which is changing quickly. But they create more money every year. I'm sure you've heard about the Fed printing more money. Every time that they print more money, the money in your pocket is worth less. There's more in the pool. Money is a commodity, just like corn. If there's a really good yield on corn for farmers one year, corn lowers in price because there's more of it in the market. They can charge less and still make their profit. So the more money there is out there, the less the stuff in your pocket is worth. So every time they print more money than what is coming in and being destroyed by whatever means, they're devaluing your dollar in a big way. Now, it's not just the big banks like the Federal Reserve that are devaluing your money. It's the small banks too, the people that you have your checking account with. And they do it through fractional reserve banking. So let's say that you put $100 into the bank. Now, there's a reason that checking account is free, and why they give you free checks and make sure you have a debit card, and why that building is so beautiful without charging you anything. And the reason is because they're loaning your money out to people. How do they do that? Well, if they have enough people leaving money in the bank, they can loan money out, and the odds of everybody coming and taking their money at the same time is very low. That's what we call a bank run. And bank runs can easily destroy banks if everybody is to take their money out at the same time. That's why after the Great Depression, we saw banks taking holidays and closing so that there wouldn't be bank runs on them. So they take your $100 and they can loan that out, but not only can they loan it out and charge interest on it, your money, they can loan out up to 10 times the amount of money they have. That's right. So on your $100, they can loan out $1,000 on top of the interest that the person is going to be paying back to them for the loan. Now, if you ask your buddy, hey, can I borrow $100? He can't loan that to you on 10 because he doesn't have it. They just create the number in a bank account. And that money never existed and only exists because of your ability to pay it back. So let's say that you have a loan for $1,000 with 2% interest. Not only are they getting your 2% interest, but they're getting $900 from you that they never had to begin with. That money is created out of nowhere, and it is profit to them. That creates fake money. It's money that never existed, that's being loaned, only on your ability to give it back to them. Also, devaluing the dollar. So, what does this all mean? It means that it's almost impossible to retire. It means that none of these people, banks, government, or publicly traded companies, work on your behalf. And it makes they are out to get you because they cannot exist without you. You are the biggest resource that they have. So what can you do? Well, one quick thing you can do is keep your savings in something other than dollars and keep it out of the bank. I keep my savings in silver. You can avoid these giant publicly traded companies and instead go to a smaller company, even a smaller publicly traded company. You know, there's places that you can go other than Walmart to get all of your stuff. There's a place around here in the Midwest called Meijer. Publicly traded, but a much smaller company. And once they start to get bigger, if they ever become Walmart, stop shopping there too. Because these people do not have you in mind. They have money in mind, and at the highest levels, they have power in mind. So I hope that explains to people who often question who are these they that you speak of. I hope I've answered your question a little bit. And if you like this video, like it, share it, subscribe it, and go to themediaspeaks.com. Click on our ads to Bud K's. Watch our live shows every Saturday. If you don't got time to watch it on your computer, you can go on Stitcher, get the MP3, audio, or you can go on iTunes. So that's my video, and I hope you better understand they. I'm Kyle Phillips, themediaspeaks.com. Thanks for watching.